Episode 56J. Overseas markets could be harming forests in the U.S. Demand for wood pellets for biomass energy has increased dramatically around the world, especially in Europe where burning wood is treated as renewable energy and heavily subsidized. Excerpts edited by Rozep for brevity and clarity on the subject that wood burning is not carbon neutral. The UK-based company Drax Group plans to build a 450,000 ton per year wood pellet plant in Longview, Washington State. Peter Riggs, director of the Washington state-based nonprofit Pivot Point, said the region has a productive wood sector. This new wood pellet plant proposed for Longview is very different, Riggs pointed out. First of all, it's not for the domestic market, it's not making pellets for home stoves. It represents a substantial and entirely new source of wood fiber demand for export. Riggs said much of the biomass would be bound for Asia. His organization signed a letter, along with more than 100 others in the US and Canada, calling for the European Union to stop incentivizing wood burning as renewable energy. Laura Haight, U.S. Policy Director for the Partnership for Policy Integrity, said despite its label as renewable energy, burning wood from forests one of the worst activities for the environment. It releases emissions when burned and removes trees that store carbon. Haight's organization also signed a letter to the European Union, urging it to no longer classify forest biomass as renewable. It's the money that's driving this system, Haight asserted. If they change that policy, then this will no longer be subsidized, and we can see a better future for our forests and for our climate. Riggs noted solar and wind energy were subsidized, and the costs have gone down dramatically. However, the same is not true for forest biomass. He emphasized plant operators have struggled to reduce the costs involved in sourcing, transporting, and burning biomass fuels. If they're going to subsidize it, you kind of got to subsidize it forever, Riggs contended. But with wind and solar, those are already cost competitive. Opinion in 2022 that wood burning is not carbon neutral. Rozep View. The article below states that on December 22, 2022, the United States $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill declared forest bioenergy carbon neutral and instructed federal agencies to adopt policies supporting that assumption, discarding efforts in both the House and Senate to avoid the terminology. It is left to residents against wood smoke emission particulates to continue to argue that wood burning is not carbon neutral, and that wood burning emits more particulates of 2.5 micrometer size, PM2.5, than fossil fuel coal burning, and that wood burning emits 450 times more particulates than the cleanest fossil fuel, natural gas, burning, if emissions are measured at the stack or the fence line. This article goes on to list arguments against the designation of wood burning as carbon neutral. 1. Scientists say the research on forest biomass defies simple declarations about what the carbon benefits are. Variables include how quickly forests grow back and how much carbon emissions occur in the harvesting, transporting, and ultimately burning of wood for energy. 2. EPA has stepped back from declarations during the Trump administration that forest biomass is carbon neutral, and the U.S. Energy Information Administration struck a nuanced position in its monthly energy review in November. 3. Critics of the wood-to-energy industry said they were disappointed by the provision's inclusion in the omnibus, which covers all federal agencies for the fiscal year that started October 1st. They attributed its endurance to Maine senior senator, Republican Susan Collins, an appropriator whose state is a timber industry leader with the balance of power so slim in the Senate. Republicans like Susan Collins can easily swing this sort of deal, said Laura Haight, U.S. Policy Director at the Partnership for Policy Integrity, a nonprofit energy and environment advocacy organization that's lobbied against biomass energy. We can only hope the EPA sticks to the science of biomass, not the politics. 4. The Partnership for Policy Integrity, PPI, and other groups wrote lawmakers earlier in December, urging against the biomass rider's inclusion. Carbon neutral scores another victory in omnibus. December 22, 2022. eNews.net Since Rozep included excerpts from this article, above, arguing that wood burning is carbon neutral, excerpts edited by Raep for brevity and clarity, below, are the arguments by the wood-burning industry that wood burning is carbon neutral. Senator Susan Collins, Republican Maine, has long been a champion of declaring biomass to be carbon neutral. A perennial battle in Congress over the environmental effects of burning wood for energy has tipped again toward the biomass industry. The $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill declares forest bioenergy carbon neutral and instructs federal agencies to adopt policies supporting that assumption, discarding efforts in both the House and Senate to avoid the terminology. Industry groups say turning woody biomass into energy doesn't add to net carbon emissions as long as forests aren't converted to non-forest uses in the process. The bill language, which has appeared annually for several years, reflects that position. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change excludes carbon released from the burning of biomass from its energy-related emissions reporting, the EIA said. A spokesperson for Collins said Maine and other states rely on biomass to meet their renewable energy goals. Recognizing the carbon neutrality of biomass encourages investments in working forests, harvesting operations, bioenergy, wood products, and paper manufacturing. The Southeast tops the U.S. wood pellet industry and ships the product to Europe, where governments view wood to energy positively compared to fossil fuels. The biggest company in the industry, Enviva, has lobbied for favorable policies, citing how carbon accounting reflects benefits. Enviva said Forest Service inventories suggest the amount of captured carbon is increasing every year in Southeast forests wood pellets compare favorably to coal, Enviva said on its website, referencing a 2015 study published in Environmental Research Letters. Rozep view. In this 2022 article, arguments are made against designating wood burning carbon neutral. The article concludes by saying it is clear that the best way to reduce the climate impacts of home heating is to leave trees growing in the forest and invest in insulation and true low or zero carbon energy. The Venn diagram between residents against wood smoke emission particulates and the authors of this article would have 100% overlap in the priority of addressing residential wood burning pollution affecting human health. Wood fires bad for the planet, more evidence shows. Notion of wood burning as climate neutral source of energy is quickly being invalidated by hard facts. Friday, February 25, 2022 1:00 EST. Excerpts edited by Rozep for brevity and clarity on the subject that wood burning is not carbon neutral. We like to think of wood burning as a climate neutral source of energy. This has led to subsidized wood burning for electricity generation. This idea relies on the carbon released from wood burning being reabsorbed by forests and woodland. Reality is more complex. 1. It takes time for new forests to regrow and absorb the carbon. For large-scale wood burning for power generation using wood imported from North America, it can take decades or perhaps more than a century for forests to reabsorb this additional carbon from our air. This means greater chances of irreversible climate tipping points before any possible benefits accrue. 2. For the same amount of heat or energy, burning wood releases more carbon dioxide than oil or gas. This means more carbon in the air immediately after burning wood for electricity compared with fossil fuels, and more carbon in the air after an evening in front of the wood fire than using the central heating. This extra carbon has to be absorbed by new tree growth before we can even talk about neutrality. A representative from Protect the Forest Sweden said, "Bioenergy aggravates the climate crisis." A study in Finland concluded that wood heating was the least climate-friendly option for Finnish homes. A French study has looked at ways to meet a rapid increase in demand for wood energy. These included cutting old forests or chopping down trees before they are fully grown.